Friday's episode of Days of Our Lives may be the kind of chapter where private emotions finally become public consequences. Because by the time April 10th arrives, several storylines seem ready to cross an important threshold. Desire may become betrayal, suspicion may become direct confrontation, romantic confusion may become heartbreak, and what looks like a warm family return may quietly set off an even bigger mess. What makes this episode feel so strong is that nearly every major beat is built on one simple problem. People are no longer on the same page. And in Salem, that is when everything gets dangerous. So let's break down why Friday, April 10th could end up being one of the most revealing episodes of the week. Friday's biggest development may easily be Sarah and Brady taking things to the next level, because this is the kind of moment that does more than heat up a storyline. It changes its meaning. Up to now, whatever has been building between them could still be interpreted in softer terms. Attraction, emotional vulnerability, two people leaning on each other at the wrong time. But once that connection becomes physical, the ambiguity starts to disappear. The story is no longer about whether something is forming. It becomes about what this choice is going to cost. This is not happening in a calm emotional environment. Brady is already stretched thin by Rachel's crisis, Kristen's volatility, and the constant strain of trying to hold himself together while chaos keeps pressing in from every direction. Sarah is just as complicated in her own way, because her world is still tied to Xander whether she wants that influence or not. So if she and Brady cross this line now, it will not feel like a random romantic beat. It will feel like two emotionally overburdened people stepping into something that may offer comfort in the moment but create instability everywhere else. Because once intimacy enters the picture, motives get harder to hide. What was this really about? Was it escape? Was it loneliness? Was it genuine connection? Or was it a decision made by two people who are too emotionally tangled in other problems to fully understand the fallout they are creating? Friday may not answer all of that immediately, but it could be the episode where those questions become unavoidable. And Xander's side of the hour makes the whole thing even more striking. If he is off celebrating with Gwen while Sarah and Brady are moving into dangerous territory, the contrast may create exactly the kind of dramatic irony soaps thrive on. One character may still believe the ground beneath him is steady while the audience can already see the crack forming. That kind of setup rarely leads to safety. It usually leads to a much harsher collision later. So this may not be a scene about passion alone. It may be the moment a private emotional connection becomes a public problem waiting to happen. Kristen calling EJ out could be one of Friday's most electric scenes, because this feels less like a confrontation and more like an attack on the story EJ has been telling himself. EJ is the kind of character who often builds his defense around results. If the plan worked, then in his mind, the method becomes easier to justify. If Lexi is awake, then he may believe the outcome should silence at least some of the outrage. But Kristen is not likely to let him hide behind success that easily. If she now sees the full picture, then Friday may be the episode where she starts tearing into the logic EJ uses to protect himself. Kristen's anger here may not come only from the fact that Lexi is alive. It may come from the fact that something this massive happened without her being brought fully into it. That kind of exclusion hits differently for a character like Kristen. She does not simply resent secrets because they are secrets. She resents what they imply, that someone else decided she did not need to know, did not deserve a say, or could be controlled through omission. Because once Kristen feels shut out of power, she stops approaching the issue as a calm observer. She starts treating it like a challenge. And EJ may be the worst possible person for that energy to crash into, since his instinct is often to stay confident, double down, and act as if control is still firmly in his hands. If he responds that way here, he may only inflame her further. What makes this especially compelling is that the real argument may not be over facts at all. It may be over who gets to decide what counts as acceptable damage. EJ may point to Lexi's awakening and see proof. Kristen may look at the same situation and see arrogance, manipulation, and emotional wreckage dressed up as success. That difference in worldview can make a scene feel much more dangerous than a typical sibling clash, because neither side is really debating information. They are debating legitimacy. So Friday may not just show Kristen demanding answers. It may show her trying to strip EJ of the moral cover he has been hiding behind. Leo and Dimitri's Friday material may deliver a very different kind of pain, because this does not feel like explosive betrayal. It feels like the slow, awful realization that two people were standing in very different emotional places while pretending they were moving toward the same future. Dimitri may have had good reason to believe something real was growing between them. Leo may have seemed open enough, interested enough, even hopeful enough to make that belief feel reasonable. But the larger story has been quietly pointing elsewhere. Javi has remained the emotional thread Leo never truly cut. That means Dimitri may be investing in what feels like a developing connection, while Leo is still being pulled backward by feelings he never fully resolved. Because the real heartbreak here may not come from one dramatic confession. It may come from recognition. From Dimitri starting to see that Leo's uncertainty was not temporary hesitation, but evidence that his heart was never fully available in the first place. That realization tends to land fast in soap scenes. One small moment, one reaction, one shift in tone, and suddenly the whole relationship looks different. Leo is not necessarily cruel, but he is messy in a way that can still hurt people deeply. He tends to feel his way through decisions emotionally, often without fully understanding the damage that indecision creates for the person standing closest to him. So if Friday gives Dimitri that painful moment of clarity, the scene may work not because someone is lying outright, but because emotional truth is arriving too late to protect anyone. Because once Dimitri senses that Leo is already leaning toward Javi, the issue is no longer whether Leo will eventually decide between them. The issue becomes whether Dimitri was ever really in the race emotionally to begin with. That is a much sadder realization, and often a much more powerful one. So this storyline may not simply be about romantic direction. It may be about the emotional damage caused when one person finally admits what their heart has been saying for a while, but only after someone else has already started believing in the wrong future. Javi surprising Rafe may sound like one of Friday's softer beats, but that may be exactly why it matters. On a soap, scenes like this often do more than provide warmth. They establish emotional ground before the fallout starts spreading. Javi is not just returning to Salem. He is returning with momentum. If the surprise includes news about the new man in his life, then the show may be doing something very smart here, presenting Javi as someone who is not coming back emotionally unfinished, but emotionally situated. That changes the dynamic immediately. He is no longer just the absent figure Leo has been longing for. He becomes a real, present complication with his own life already moving forward. Because the moment Javi re-enters Salem as someone with a relationship attached, Leo's feelings for him become much more dangerous. Longing is one thing when the person is off-screen or abstract. It becomes far more disruptive when that person walks back into town with visible emotional stakes already in place. And if Friday starts grounding Javi through family first, that only makes the romantic fallout around him stronger later. Rafe's role in this is important too. For him, the surprise may land as something affectionate, unexpected, even welcome. There may be warmth in the reunion. There may be curiosity about this new chapter in Javi's life. But there may also be a subtle layer of concern, especially if Rafe senses that Javi's return could bring more complications than it first appears. Because family members in Salem often become the first witnesses to storm clouds forming before the characters at the center fully admit it. So Friday may not be using Javi's return just to create a nice family moment. It may be placing him back on the board in the most effective way possible, grounded, emotionally relevant, and immediately capable of disrupting multiple romantic directions at once. And that is what makes this beat deceptively powerful. What makes April 10th feel especially strong is not that it promises one giant bombshell. It is that several storylines appear ready to stop disguising themselves. For days, some of these plots may have seemed manageable on the surface. Sarah and Brady could still be read as emotional drift. Kristen and EJ could still be treated like simmering suspicion. Leo and Dimitri could still be mistaken for a romance with genuine forward motion. Javi's return could still sound like a pleasant family beat. But Friday may be the episode that strips away those softer readings and reveals what each story actually is. Sarah and Brady may no longer be a gray area emotional bond. They may become a real threat to trust. Kristen and EJ may no longer be operating in hints and tension. They may enter outright warfare. Leo and Dimitri may no longer be circling possibility. They may be confronting incompatibility. And Javi's return may no longer be something warm at the edges of the episode. It may become the factor that destabilizes several hearts at once. Not because every arc explodes at maximum volume, but because the episode allows the audience to finally see the true shape of what has been forming underneath. A relationship stops being complicated and becomes dangerous. A secret stops being containable and becomes combustible. A romance stops being uncertain and becomes unsustainable. Because it gives movement without needing to overplay every beat. It trusts that the audience can feel the shift. And often, those are the episodes that end up feeling most important in retrospect. Not because they shouted the loudest, but because they clarified everything. So April 10th may not just advance the plot. It may expose which stories were always heading toward betrayal, confrontation, heartbreak, and chaos, even when they still looked manageable on the surface. Friday, April 10th may be one of those Days of Our Lives episodes where tension stops simmering and starts changing people's lives. Sarah and Brady may cross a line that cannot be uncrossed. Kristen may come at EJ with the kind of anger that turns secrecy into a real liability. Dimitri may realize Leo's heart is no longer where he thought it was. And Javi's return may add a whole new layer of complication just as Salem's emotional balance is already shifting. That is what makes this episode so promising. It may not just move the plot forward. It may expose exactly who is out of step, who is in denial, and who is about to regret everything most.